Right, and we have Assemblymember Baker, who's on the higher ed and just joined us and has some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. I was delayed in another committee with votes, and I was unable to hear all of your testimony, but the chair is raising some good questions that I want to offer some perspectives and also drill down specifically, and that is, on the comment point, you've raised the point that veterans were still enrolling and they were sometimes not getting great advice. One of the areas that our veterans, I think, really deserves are veteran-specific services that are quality, and they are delivered by a fellow veteran, so they don't feel somebody who can't relate at all to their experience is trying to guide them. And sometimes the county veteran service officers are the primary and main point of contact for a veteran. And I offer that one of the potential solutions isn't just what we're looking at as a body in terms of who should be accrediting, is accreditation sufficient? It's also what can we be doing to make sure that the resources are already tailored to our veterans and delivered by fellow veterans are their highest quality, including our veteran service officers at the county level. They are able to provide some of that mentoring and guidance that could have helped some of those veterans who otherwise were put in a not great direction. So that's the comment part. The question is, if you are finding some of the complaints and concerns that you've seen with respect to Corinthian and veterans, if you find similar complaints about perhaps some community colleges or other higher education institutions, because I want to make sure that we are also mindful of that. And, for example, just again, the concern of the quality of advice they get as a veteran when they come to a campus, and they're somewhat isolated from others because they have a very different experience than, say, the 20-year-old who has not served. So are you finding any complaints that are similar to what you might hear, or what are the ones that are very specifically exclusive to, say, a Corinthians institution?
Those are fantastic questions. So just real quick to respond to the comment, I think that's a great suggestion. My only concern would be it depends upon if we're talking about on the front end or the back end. I think with respect to the front end, where to invest those benefits, I think the county veteran service officers could play an important role. On the back end, these issues become very complex with respect to how to deal with the fallout of Corinthian in a way that, quite frankly, I think you need someone with legal training to be able to go through the different statutes and advise them with respect to what's the best place to actually, or what's the best next step, because different actions they take could ultimately end up foreclosing other rights. Then, with respect to your specific question, am I seeing this in either community colleges or nonprofit schools or our four-year schools? I can tell you this. If you were to look at our call log, at least 98% or more of the calls come from students who attended for-profit schools. We have had calls. They're occasional, but that's just, I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think that part of it is when I see someone come in who has had a problem at a community college or at a four-year school, like a nonprofit or a state school, I can usually, with a simple letter or a phone call, resolve that problem without having to resort to litigation. The response I get invariably when we're dealing with a for-profit school is I get a letter from a lawyer who tells me we'll see you in court. And so there's no attempt to try to resolve the issue. In fact, usually it's a blame on the veteran. That's usually what we deal with. So it's a completely different tone in how to resolve the problem. That doesn't mean certainly that there aren't issues at various community colleges or nonprofit or state schools. But I think with respect, at least to my experience, the majority of the problems are within the for-profit sector. That doesn't mean that all the for-profit schools are bad. Absolutely not. But that seems to be where the bad actors are specifically located.
A quick follow-up on the point that you raised about the possibility of legal advice being included on the back end. I certainly do think that there is already in place quite a bit of pro bono legal services available, particularly for helping students. I see that I have a legal background, and law firms get referrals. They have relationships with legal aid organizations. They are exactly the type of cases that both attorneys as well as law students need to complete their pro bono hours, perhaps with their firm. And it is a type of case that is very good for, I think, a pro bono obligation that the legal profession should have. Are these ones trying to deal with what do we do in a post-Corinthian world for our veterans and other students? I caution us for spending valuable resources from the fund on paying attorneys, and as an attorney, I feel I can say that, to provide a service that they may already be willing to provide pro bono, and that we focus those resources on helping students as well as making sure our VSOs can also make those referrals to pro bono legal services that can help our veterans. Just because those funds are so valuable and they are limited, we want to make sure they are helping as many students as possible. And I just encourage us to keep that in mind. So I do believe that legal services is something that we can help our veterans with. Just don't want to pay for something that we should have a pro bono obligation to provide. That's a sermon you get from me today.
I am right now, to my knowledge, I have the only clinic focused on veterans that is providing services in this area. If there is a list somewhere of pro bono services that would do this, I would love to, because I have a wait list. I don't know of any in San Diego or really throughout anywhere else in California that specifically focuses on the pro bono piece for veterans, because it's a nuance that matters. And I can't find counsel who are willing to take these kind of issues because they're so esoteric, down in the weeds with respect to the Department of Education's rules, the VA's rules, the BPPE's rules. So if there is that resource, I would be happy to hear it. I think it's a problem. I think it's a limiting factor on what we can do because we only have so much in the way of resources. We have a wait list. I would love to be able to assist more veterans.
We should follow up with each other directly on that one. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Okay. I was just going to ask. Okay.
I just need to leave. I found out I have a meeting, they told me. But I just wanted to say this has been an excellent hearing. And I believe that it also points up that education of our veterans, education is very important. We have got to see how we can extend more educational opportunities to our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Brown, for joining us. I really appreciate all the work that the Attorney General's office has done, and I was wondering, are there additional changes? I mean, I know with the GI Bill that's at the federal level, but are there additional changes that we can pursue to weed out some of these bad actors?
I mean, it's interesting because coming from the perspective of, kind of a litigator, and we do the impact litigation side of it, it's a lot of it has been the enforcement side. There are a number of good anti-fraud measures that are currently in place for, cracking down on the bad actors. Our concern has primarily been about the repercussions that come from after the fact on enforcement. It's one of the reasons why I think that bills dealing specifically with student support are so important. I would definitely say that, our consumer section would always be, happy to assist the legislature in a number of different reforms that can have to do with, extending our ability to do these enforcement measures, whether or not they're related to something in the procedural process or just by targeting and creating more specific, complaint-ready laws for these schools to have to comply with. So that's something that I think would be very happy to partner with the legislature with next year to go after more of the front end as opposed to, what's currently the focus, which is looking after the students that are hit by these schools.
Do you have an additional comment on that?
No, I think that makes perfect sense.
I'm really surprised to hear your 98% complaint rate with the for-profits. I have to say, I stated it at the beginning, where we are just looking at the bad actors right now, and we shouldn't paint with a broad brush. And the thing that the for-profits have done, I think, in general, better than the publics or the non-profit privates, is flexibility. And that is, when you are a veteran coming out, you don't necessarily feel that comfortable hanging around with 18-year-olds. So being able to do those online courses and being able to have that kind of flexibility, I think, is very enticing to veterans, and our public schools and nonprofit schools need to do, I think, a better job of showing that they are a better alternative. The other thing that we found is it's very difficult for at the Cal States and from the community colleges also to get a really good idea of what are the numbers, what is the job placement. If we concretely had those numbers, we would much better be able to compare the for-profits with the nonprofits. That would be kind of, maybe that's some explanation as to, I don't know what the percentage is of vets that are going into these programs, but certainly it's criminal to take 4 years of benefits and end up with an education that's 10 years behind in technology. And so do you have some closing thoughts? I mean, this has been, thank you for coming up from San Diego. This has been really, it was really great to hear from you. But do you have some closing thoughts on what else we can do as a legislature?
No, I certainly appreciate very much your time and the opportunity to speak with you today. I think I laid out the reforms that I specifically would recommend, and I'd ask you to focus on those that were discussed by the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I think they're on the right track with respect to a bond, with respect to graduation in loan cohort default rates, and I think also we could look at potentially funding CalVet to be able to do their job a little bit better. I think they're just understaffed. I think they could use more funding. And then finally, I think we just need to enforce the regulations that already exist in a more robust fashion to ensure that our veterans are being taken care of and that their education benefits and our taxpayer funds aren't being wasted. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, it's been extremely informative, the two of you. A great close to this session. I do want to open it up for public comment. Is there anybody that would like to say anything? Any comments from the audience? Oh, come on up.
Good morning. My name is Audie Moyeri. I go to the University of San Diego School of Law, and Professor Muth is my supervising attorney. One thing I wanted to address, in addition to all of the stuff that has already been mentioned, is that transparency is the biggest thing that we need to have our veterans. It needs to be transparent for them. So if you have a university or, a for-profit school that has a graduation rate of 30%, default rates of 60%, retention rate after employment of 10%, let them know that. And then they have the choice to spend their money how they wish. I think the problem is the sharing of information, as you mentioned. It doesn't go between the necessary parties. And you said before, maybe we're looking at the wrong metrics. I would say perhaps we need to add more metrics, as have been previously discussed, in order for them to really see what solution is the best for them, what educational solution.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you have? All right. Well, I think it's been a great hearing, and I thank everybody that was involved today, and especially those that traveled from afar. Thank you very much for being here today.